Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod TV's #1 do-it-yourself advocate show, Timeshares, Solution, or Surrender, where I the timeshares deceptive acts and trying to help people turn their horror stories into more of a happier ending. And again, I'm saying deceptive acts. Not every timeshare has a deceptive act, but Irene has spent thousands of hours and her time guiding people to the right solutions. And sometimes the right solutions is how to utilize the timeshare that you bought. Sometimes it's how to get out of the timeshare you bought. Everyone, help me welcome my hero, Irene Parker, who has successfully guided people to a right solution many, many times. Hello, Irene.
Hi, and Kim, you have to learn to say they because our board members at TARDA,
We have a
Timeshare and Resort,
team. Yes,
Timeshare and Resort Developer Accountability,
exactly.
today really shone through for one of our guests today. And this has been such a busy week. I don't even know where to begin. So I'm going to ask to have you bring our first guest on screen, Miriam. And Miriam is from Ontario. And hi Miriam.
Hello. Good
Is she,
afternoon.
we're doing kind of a recap and an update on the Manhattan Club that we talked about earlier on a prior show. And then we also are going to introduce Julie. And Julie has worked with one of our board members in a proactive manner to help with her timeshare, which is Oakmont. So I want to begin the show with two breaking timeshare news announcements or lawsuit announcements. And then there's been quite a few people that have reached out over the last week. And Miriam and Julie may be able to relate to some of the things that happened too. I'll pick the two most egregious that reached out. So Kim is headquartered in North Carolina, and we were kind of surprised to see the first lawsuit was filed by Joshua Stein, the North Carolina Attorney General, and he has sued Club Exploria for illegal robocalls. And we have had our TARDA board member on the show, Sheila, she's battling some very serious medical problems and she can't go upstairs. And Club Exploria, even though they have taken back timeshares for a couple other people, including one other guest, they will not allow her a release despite debilitating medical conditions. And you can't make this up. The robocall, we have the TARDA newsletter is going to come out in a few days or next week at the latest. And we will include the robocall in our newsletter. So if you just go to contact us and you want to join our newsletter, please feel free to do so. They started the robocall, hi, a robot, an AI calling. This is a TripAdvisor calling from Helping Hands Association. That's an organization that helps orphans. And then they went on to say that we're pleased to announce that a resort in Orlando has been getting rave reviews, and you can stay for 3 nights if you just get back to us telling us what a great time you had at Club Exploria. So according to North Carolina law, they are required to identify themselves at the beginning of the robocall. And we all get a lot of robocalls. Julie, do you get people calling you saying they have a buyer for their timeshare?
I haven't had that yet. No.
You're fortunate because I don't know, Miriam, you're in Canada. I don't know if it works the same in the US, but I get 1 or 2 calls a day, and some people are saying they're getting 5 calls a day. Any unsolicited caller that says they have a buyer for your timeshare is a scam. The second court action was not a lawsuit, but it is, and I'm going to ask Miriam and Julie to help me, certiorari.
Very well said.
Okay, the writ of certiorari, which is asking the higher court to review a lower court's decision. And this is nothing other than the Supreme Court. And this is so important because right now we're hearing from 8 military families, of which 6 are active duty, with their security clearances jeopardized, and they all, except one, report that they were lied to about the timeshare. We've had Andrew and Brooke on our show, where a young couple with a family of a family with a 6-year-old, just 3 of them, were sold a 4-bedroom as a rental opportunity. And so this writ of certiorari is to go back to the first Military Lending Act filed. The first one was Lewis versus Blue Green. And in the lower court, the judges ruled that the damages could not be traced to, the conduct could not be traced to the conduct. They lacked specific allegations. That lawsuit was appealed, and they upheld Blue Green's. So that was kind of lost. Then Westgate, Steins versus Westgate lost in the lower court, where the judge ruled, and I love to quote Judge Dalton, "When I check out of a timeshare, I cannot leave my underwear and toothpaste," as to ascertain that a timeshare stay is more like a transient stay than a residential stay, because home mortgages are exempt from the Military Lending Act. So Westgate lost in the lower court. They appealed. Taya, who's in the Army and one of the very first guests on this show, February 26th, she attended with me. We went to the appellate court, and the judges, the 3 appellate judges, upheld the lower court's decision. So what this writ of certiorari is to that they feel that the lawsuit was dismissed because it lacked standing. And when I read the writ, I need more time to digest it. But because it's hurting our military so badly, I wanted to bring that up. The 2 complaints that I just want to go over, and I have their permission to discuss them on the show. The first was Sonia. Sonia's husband served 16 years with the Army National Guard, and he was injured in Iraq, and was, at the time they purchased their Westgate timeshare, he was 30 to 40% disabled. He is now, it's a condition that as he ages, it gets progressively worse. And so now he is 100% disabled. And she was told that if they couldn't use it, they would be able to rent it out and cover the cost of the program. It would be easy to sell. And so they appealed for a medical release. And we haven't heard back from Westgate yet, but we're hoping that they do. One of the things that they said in the Westgate hearing that I attended in Florida is that they really, really care about veterans. So we'll see. The other family that reached out just yesterday was referred by a resale broker, and I could not believe it. Kim will remember Norma, who's been on the show twice. She's a Wyndham buyer. And she owes Wyndham at age 80. Her husband is age 80, a pastor for 53 years, $4,300 a month. And she is now in default with Wyndham. There's no way if he retires, it will be with no pension. So this family contacted me and said that they signed a $56,000 Wyndham contract. told that they had to convert their points to property. Well, what's happening is the opposite. They want you to convert your deeded timeshare to points. And they went back to the sales center before they contacted us and handed a letter to rescind, but that doesn't work. You have to look in the contract to see the instructions and rescind at the headquarters. Well, they never received copies of the contract. So Kim, you're familiar with this, where they give you a flash drive, and it's very common to have a complaint that you can't, that the documents are not on the flash drive. So hopefully they went to UPS yesterday and sent overnight. So there's never a dull moment in timeshare. So now with that, we're going to start with Miriam, because Miriam has been on about the Manhattan Club, and we just want, I'll give a brief recap, and then Miriam can say what's happening and currently. So the Manhattan Club was investigated by the New York Attorney General in 2014, and they admitted fraud, which is unusual. And they were fined $6.5 million, which is the equivalent of a parking ticket, because they took in $100 million in maintenance fee dollars, and who knows with rental income. It took 2 years for the court to rule in a lawsuit Jean-Marc Zimmerman filed against the Manhattan Club. There are 200 plaintiffs, and the Charles Acklin versus the Manhattan Club, including Bruce Eichner, Scott Lager, and their entities. And this concerns fraud-based RICO claims. And the problem is always that allegations are not uniform as to something like a medical device failure. So Miriam, let us know where you're at with this. There's been a little bit of news since you've been on the show.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. To start with, our lawyer, Jean-Marc Zimmerman, has joined as a partner a new law firm. He was working on his own before. So the new firm is Lukowski Brookman. And he has drafted a letter for all the existing members of the group. So we are about 200 to have a new agreement with us, since he is no longer in his previous firm, so to speak. It was his own. So we're working on finalizing the terms of these of that letter, so to speak. And it seemed to be, to me anyway, it was a good moment to propitious moment to increase the number of members of that group, because I think there are 14,500 owners at the Manhattan Club, and we only got 200 in our group. So we could probably take this opportunity to ask other members who haven't heard from that lawsuit to join. So we are working on that just through our forum on Facebook, and we have a few people who already approached us to get more information about Zimmerman. So that's what we're doing. Regarding the sort of dismissing of the case because everybody has a different complaint, I find that hard to take, because or to accept rather, because actually everybody has the same complaint. You know, whether somebody has got 3 weeks at the Manhattan Club or 1 week, we are all, you can read on the forums online, the same complaints. It was fine at the beginning, the fees, the annual fees were reasonable, etc. And then it became absolutely impossible to rent the place when we wanted to, when we had been promised that we could. So it was difficult to rent the place. And then the annual fee started to skyrocket. And now people feel totally frustrated to have to pay such an enormous amount per night through the annual fees after having dispersed such a big amount to start with most of the time. So I believe that the whole of the industry, just like you believe that, I'm sure, have to be reviewed and have to be made more equitable and certainly more human. Because when you see those cases of people who are old and sick and who cannot use their timeshare anymore and still are billed those enormous amounts because simply they cannot sell it, which is also a promise that I was made, that I could sell it when I wanted to, and it would be increasing in value. But these are all false claims. So just because they have been so dishonest, even though who knows what chances we have to make people in the legal department understand that it indeed we were sold something that was not what it was. I think that just for that, for this dishonesty in the business, we have to continue with this lawsuit, and that's why I'm hoping that Jean-Marc Zimmerman can do something for us, and other people might profit from it too if they want to join the group. So there is hopefully a new hope, a new chapter now, after we have signed that letter with Jean-Marc Zimmerman. That's what my
And
hope.
the two primary issues of fraud, and these are common complaints with throughout the industry, is that the maintenance fees, they admitted they were artificially low, something like for New York City in a week, $400 for the year, and they increased to like $3,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, depends on the size of the place you had, obviously, and the number of weeks. But yes, it went from, yeah, I say from 500 to 3,500 in some cases, from what I see. Mhm.
And then the other is that non-owners could book for less,
Yeah,
it was less expensive than for an owner to book,
yeah,
an equivalent maintenance fee dollars.
absolutely. Yeah. So, you can, it was always frustrating to know that when you wanted to go, let's say I had paid to have always a weekend when I was going, and then it wasn't available, and then you would go on, let's say, booking.com or something like that, and you found that same weekend available through them. So that was just not acceptable, right? But
Right, and someone has approached you saying that they have other members, owners that would be willing to join the group.
yes, I believe from what I can gather so far is that they're dealing with someone who could possibly, who says he could resell these timeshare, but I guess they're having problems going through with that promise. And when this person heard about this new opening in the group there for under Mark Zimmerman, he was interested in bringing his group of clients to that group indeed.
And Mr. Zimmerman was had his own law firm. What is the name of his new law firm?
Well, it's Lukowski and Brookman.
Okay,
And they are
and when
New Jersey, and New York. Both they have two addresses.
you joined the lawsuit, I think it was probably three years ago by now.
Mhm.
There was like a $1,500 fee to cover filings and what have you. Do you know if that's the same amount of money that someone would have to
Well,
pay?
I think I joined in 2019.
Oh,
And I know that some people that were on your show too, who joined afterwards, had to pay a higher fee, 2,000, I think. Under this new law firm, I have no idea, and he would like. I mean, Mr. Zimmerman would like to have these people refer to him, and he will discuss that with him.
and
With
we
them,
have,
sorry.
right, and he did clarify for us that if you were an existing plaintiff at his old law firm, then you won't pay any additional fees going forward.
Yes, that's the idea. Yes, and that this is why actually I received a note from him just before the show, and he said he was going to send a letter tomorrow, the new draft. So
Okay,
we will see how it is drafted, and whether it's clear that everything
okay.
is the way we would like. Yeah.
Well, great, and thank you for being on the show today for that update. And please stay with us for the entire show to support Julie. And our primary guest is not here
Yeah.
today because she was. We want to do an update on carriage resorts in Ontario. They were originally, I believe, standalone, and then they were purchased by Shell Vacation Club, and then Wyndham purchased Shell Vacation Club. After the show, I received a private message from one of the Carriage board members, and I will be reading I invited him to come on the show, and he responded snarky. And so Karen did, I asked her to be on the show, but it would be kind of like one of our presidential candidates refusing to debate and the other person showing up with no one to debate. But it's similar to what Julie has done. And the reason our guest is not here, she was the third carriage guest that I asked to be on the show. The first one had cochlear surgery, so she's deaf in both ears. The other one was her dementia is worsening, and then Jeannie today is having a medical procedure. So on top of all of this that you have to battle, timeshare on top of it is very, very difficult. But I was telling Miriam and Julie before the show that y'all are like my children, and it's really hard for me to delegate to our other board members. But I have started doing that because the volume of people, maybe thanks because of Pod TV, have been increasing. So I asked one of our board members who has experience in what they call legacy resorts, which is another word for old. I think we could include the Manhattan Club as a legacy resort. And so Julie is an owner with Oakmont. Her son is not happy with her that he's on the deed. I, would probably have given up after all she's been through already. Julie paid $4,500 to an exit company, and in 3 years they could not sell it. They remarkably refunded her money. But Julie, can you tell us your experience talking with our board member and the steps going forward that you've agreed to take?
Yes, thank you for inviting me to the show. And so this is definitely a learning curve that I'm on, one that I would prefer not to have, but I'm grateful for the information that keeps coming forward. So, Oakmont shared that they had a very robust resale program. After they told me that they didn't, they told someone else that they did. And I guess I didn't ask the right questions because they have a spot on their website where you can list your own for sale by owner.
Well, let me stop you there. We can go ahead and give a plug for Ron Roberts at Sage Marketing. He's been on our show with you, and they will put in on-site or off-site resale programs. So we actually, you've got a new buddy at Oakmont, Larry, and who you said has been very nice, even if not being very helpful. And so I thought, well, why doesn't Ron talk to him? And Ron did call him, and that's where I think we first heard the word robust. And but a robust resale program is not a website with 166 listings. And as I understand it, they require that you list it for a minimum of 2,500. Okay, so you went ahead in that direction, but you're also going to go in the direction that our board member suggested you go.
Correct. I'm sorry about my barking dog. She's quiet when I'm not.
We like dogs.
I have two waiting to bark here,
So I put it on mute. She doesn't bark, and then I get off mute. Anyway, so that is. I'm in the process of listing on their page because I'm going to do that. And then the board member that I recently talked to talked about listing on Tug and Red Week.
And this would be the TARDA board member.
Yes.
But now, first of all, before you go there, what was the process and how successful has it been to list using the Oakmont?
Well, I'm not there yet because it says you can submit online. So I did that. I thought I did that twice, and I kept going to the site and it wasn't there. So I sent an email and said, I don't understand. And they said, well, we don't have what you sent in, so send it by US mail. So I printed it off, filled it out, sent it in, and I checked this morning. They still don't have the US mail. So it's not been super easy, but hopefully maybe they'll get it today or tomorrow, and we'll see if it goes on their page. There's 166 last time I checked. Minimum cost is $2,500 that you can ask for it. So
that was for 2 resorts. They have Oakmont and Treetop.
Yeah, Tremont or Treetop.
Tremont. No, well, Treetop is the name of the resort, and I believe Tremont is the name of the overall.
Okay. That's confusing. So the TARTA board member suggested that I post that I go ahead and pay my maintenance fee for 1 more year, and we try to post on Tug and Red Week. And he asked me to book a week so that it would be look like it was more what I want to say, Irene, more desirable.
More desirable. Like what I liked his explanation that if you post something for sale, it's like, well, why do you want to get rid of it? Whereas if you post a week, and when I worked in rentals and resales for about 2 weeks, I learned that that's common practice to do that. That if you are someone that goes to, I want to buy a timeshare, and you see that 4th of July week is booked, you're already got a positive mindset. It's all psychological, I believe. And most resorts will allow you to change that date if you need to. But and what did you come up with a price? I noticed on Red Week there were 2 listings and one sold for $1.
Right. Yeah. No, I haven't. That's my next step, is to get a hold of the board member and then kind of walk through what I should kind of say on both of those. But yes, on Red Week, when I looked and explored that option before, there was one from Oakmont for $1 and one from Oakmont for $1,000. And I guess you said the one for $1 had sold.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wonder why.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. And then also you're not, if you have to default, you said you weren't really that worried about you, but your son is not that happy with you for adding his name to the deed. Now, somewhere along the line, I would think you would have to sign to be on a deed, but nobody remembers that, correct? And our board member had a suggestion for that.
I had no documents that he signed. And in fact, I sort of feel like at the last minute, they said, well, we should put 2 names on here. And since he's going to inherit it, we'll put his name on the deed. So, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, this is okay. So I have called the resort and asked for all the documents that have signature on them, because I don't have any that have my son's name on them. And they go, well, that was 2012. We don't keep all those things around here. And I'm like, okay, so where could I try to get that information? And he wasn't, he just said, just look at what's on the deed. That's what you have to go by. So, so one of the things that I'm kicking around a little bit more now is is it possible to get him off the deed? Like, could we do a quick claim deed to get him off the title and the deed? Because I really don't care. I'm at the age where I'm not going to buy any more houses or cars, probably. But he is. So he's not very happy with the whole situation, and I told him I'm working very hard. Yeah.
Well, and then Timeshare Users Group, they have very good forums, and one of their forums is a poll tracking the consequence of defaulting on loans and maintenance fees and I believe the worst I've heard for a drop in credit score for maintenance fees is 38 points, which is, there are a lot of factors that go into maintenance fees. And as I usually explain it, if you buy a condo for $300,000 and you take out a loan for $200,000 and you default, your credit score could drop up to 200 points. But if you don't pay your HOA fees, they will put a lien on your condo so you can't get clear title to sell it. We had attorney Mike Finn on the show before, and he said that most HOAs, since they're not a lender, they do not have relationships with credit reporting agencies, but they could turn it over to a collection agent that may, I've heard it reported that it might be noted that they were delinquent on maintenance fees, but you know, that's the worst I've heard. Now, what I'd like to do is I asked, as I mentioned, Jeannie from Carriage can't be on, but I'm still going to read the response from Karen Levins to the board member. But I asked Karen, who purchased from Vacation Villas at Fantasy World, to be on the show today to support Julie, because in the event that you cannot sell this albatross by November of next year and you have no choice but to default or pay maintenance fees for the rest of your life for a product you're not going to use, Karen reached out to Vacation Villas, and this was in 2020. So she stopped paying maintenance fees 4 years ago. And the HOA president wrote back to her such a bizarre response. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's worth hearing. The backstory is, and Karen would have been on the show, but her husband's heart stopped beating in 2015, and he's had some procedures, and she's had to have a shoulder and a knee replacement. So she says it's just endless doctor's appointments. She is now 71. Her latest bill, she receives an invoice still every year, and she receives invitations to attend meetings. And like many people, and the reason in 20 years, they bought it in April of 2000. In 20 years, it's only been used twice. One was by their son. Their 29-year-old son was murdered by a police officer that was seeing his wife. Their other son, age 20, well, he's probably 24 now, has Down syndrome. And the only thing, so what the HOA president, and as she said, they were told that the maintenance fees would lock in at $400 a year. They're now $800 a year. And they paid $699 to All Realty Services, Inc. that tried to sell it and couldn't. And they offered to pay 2020 maintenance fees, 2000 and 2021, and pay reasonable transfer fees. And this was his response, April of 2020. We are not a timeshare developer. We are the Not-for-Profit Owners Association. Let me give you an analogy. Say you bought a house in an HOA with a pool. Every homeowner is billed to maintain the pool. When you purchased your home, you knew they had a pool. For 20 years, you used the pool, maybe not every day, and paid maintenance fees. Now you're older and you're not using the pool like you used to. Now you're asking the HOA to stop billing you for the pool, and knowing if they do, all the other homeowners will have to pay more to make up what you weren't paying. That's not fair to your neighbors, is it? If we started playing favorites, then we would expect to hear from you advocating for families being forced to pay more. I understand it's hard to sell a timeshare. Trust me, I know. If I had a Smith family that wanted the week, I'd introduce them to you and we'd all be happy. Unfortunately, I don't have a Smith family waiting to get a week. We don't have a sales force or a marketing arm. The 2020 maintenance fee is $909.93, but it will likely increase between now and 2030. The balance will likely be $9,000 to $11,000. Now remember, she paid $3,000 for the timeshare trap. When any owner contacts our association claiming a hardship, they are offered the opportunity to surrender their deed upon payment of an annual amount to cover the remaining fixed expenses that the association will incur until the end of the timeshare plan. We consider this to be fair and reasonable. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is the worst part. If the family truly cannot afford to meet their financial obligations, they are welcome to seek bankruptcy protection. So, time out right now. One person did file for bankruptcy before they contacted our organization, and they didn't hear from the resort for 7 years. And after 7 years, they received an invoice for 7 years of maintenance fees, because since a timeshare is worthless, it can be an abandoned asset, and you find out you still owe on it. And I reached out to an attorney that said, never file for bankruptcy if a timeshare is your only debt. So he said, while this will likely result in the other owners at Vacation Villas at Fantasy World being forced to pay more, we will rest comfortably knowing that a judge fully investigated the family's financial circumstances before acting in the best interests of society. We do not have the resources to investigate. We trust the bankruptcy courts do the right thing. And this is just hysterical. And someone told me this guy was trying to get on the board of ARDA, the Timeshare Industry Lobby. In closing, allow me, an unpaid advocate for timeshare owners of all ages at Vacation Village, at Fantasy World, to suggest that other advocates, that would be me, not reference the propaganda presented by a lobbying group funded by the people profiting from timeshare owners. ARDA is an organization of timeshare, in all caps, developers. That's what the D stands for, he has in parentheses. I also wouldn't recommend you ask the National Association of Foxes for advice on the best practices for securing hen houses. Warmest regards. So Karen responded in April, 2 days later, timeshares were sold to be just like real estate, just like a second home. If I don't like my home or the swimming pool, I can sell my home. I feel this is financial elder abuse and exploitation. So any comments hearing that, Kim, Miriam, or Julie?
Well, I think it's outrageous. I mean, it's absolutely absurd and outrageous, really. But when you hear that, it's making fun of the public, or have no respect against anything. The fact that they cannot be sold is wrong, and all the regulations have to be changed, because it's simply wrong and it's simply not acceptable. And I think I wasn't made aware of that at all when I bought mine. I really saw that when I've gone there a few, New York, or for 10 years, perhaps I will want to sell it, and then I can sell it. Even not, of course, you hope that it's going to be at a higher price than what you paid for, but even for less, because you have of course enjoyed it for a number of years, and that's worth something. And now it's time to give it to someone else and sell it to someone else, but not for $1, or not saying you have to call bankruptcy because you owe 10,000 and owe 30,000 and you can't afford it. It's not right. It's simply outrageous.
But you know how I feel about this, Irene, and I have to agree with you, Miriam, on this. That, but it's the whole system's despicable. They don't have to comply to any of the same rules and laws as lending and mortgages. Yet they can go against people as if this is real property, and it's not. There is no value to majority of this. It gains no value. We know that. You're not supposed to be able to resell it unless you go through them first, and they're not going to resell it, no matter how many times or what promises they made you to close it, because you signed a contract. They said everything they told you in the room didn't matter. You signed a contract that said everything they sold to you is not held accountable in court. And this has got to stop. I mean, they make all of these promises to close people and then take back all of the promises. That is nothing more than bait and switch to me. And that in itself is illegal. That in itself is illegal. And it should be held accountable. But what they're doing to each of these people is they not only dehumanize you, but they shame you into making you think it's your fault, or they shame you by saying things and trying to make the public or anyone else thinking you're wrong and you're not. Okay. They need to stop these tactics. Somebody needs to stop them. And it needs to change. There is no consumer protection right now, but I am learning Josh Stein has, as much as he and I don't agree on anything, and I have very little respect for him. He is stepping up to the plate on robocalls. I wish he would step up to the plate on fraud, bait and switch, lying to the consumers, but also enforcing that the laws be changed a little bit so that you
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
more than 3 days to, from the day you bought, to cancel the purchase. That date begins on another day. But I think everything that you've read is the same continuing problems that are growing bigger rather than this problem is not definitely getting smaller. So,
Well, there might be an opportunity because Megan, who's going to be on the show next week, was pregnant with her third child when Wyndham told her, oh, don't worry about not being able to use it when your husband is deployed to the combat zone. You'll be able to rent it out and it will pay for itself. She's a North Carolina resident. So maybe we can follow on the heels of this lawsuit and continue in that direction. Now, Jeannie couldn't be here today, but she was going to share with her. I heard from, well, I'll read what the response was after the show. So Carriage Hills, we didn't get to talk about last week that the Canadian kind of version of ARDA is CVOA. It used to be CARDA, the Canadian Vacation Ownership Association. This Corey Stegman was on the board of CVOA, and he was a carriage sales agent. And they have been 5 years in a lawsuit against Centerstone, Cornerstone for charging people to get out when there was no way to get out. So they had to recap from Karen Levin when she was here, was that there were what they called the three amigos. Karen was one, and Team Awesome, about a dozen people. And they forced the sale of both resorts. And she was complaining she needed 6 hours, not 1 hour, to explain everything that they had to go through to sell these resorts. So the board member from Carriage sent me a private message saying the three amigos had nothing to do with the dissolution of the Ridge or Hills, Carriage Ridge or Carriage Hills. It was the president of the Hills that figured the way out. Darren Chappell is too humble to take credit. Oh my gosh. If you look at my Facebook banner, it's 1,000 people standing outside waiting to get into the annual meeting that I was there. And we heard Daryl. I read this to my husband and he about flipped because humble is not a word that we would have used to describe this man. As an accountant, he figured out bankruptcy was the only way out. What a white knight. If anything, the three amigos added costs to our actions. So my response to this guy is I followed it closely and I listened to horror story after horror story. Would you like to be a guest on our show next week to present your opinion? It's not worth it. You swallowed their story without verifying anything. And I responded, that's ridiculous. I interviewed 134 owners, including a board member of the CVOA. And you cannot deny that Carriage would not allow a resale under any circumstances. Now, the flip side to that is we're going to have a guest on in a few weeks that was very involved for years with an HOA that does maintain an active resale and rental program to support. So it doesn't have to be that way. So then he said the barrier examiner figured it out. Read the transcripts. Why not interview Darren or myself when I was Ridge president? You had a story and that's okay. And so Karen responded, well, first of all, one of the other three amigos, when she read what he said she spit out her drink when she when she heard what he said. Karen said, and I'm reading this again, she didn't want to be back on the phone. She would have been back if he would have agreed to be here. I wish to respond to that message that you got from one of the directors. He sings Darren's praises and credits Darren with getting out of our timeshares. He fails to recall that the initial proposal that the board of directors and BDO, that was who handled the receivership, submitted to the court on April 30th, 2020 for approval of their unilateral vision moving forward was filled with the sole plan to only restructure and gave no voice to the possibility to exit. Their focus was on figuring out how much money it would cost the timeshare owners to opt out of the eventual restructuring program. Can you imagine what that would have cost owners? In fact, it was the three amigos and our lawyer who we quickly retained on May 2nd. After our first review of the April 30th application and witnessed incredible bias towards restructuring. It was obvious that the exit seekers were not going to be given full and proper consideration in court. The number of problems was so great that the first court hearing had to be postponed. That's the one we were at. We at least got to see the second one, so that BDO could hear the voices of the exit seekers and have a more balanced approach for the judge. So before April 30th, BDO was prevented from hearing from anyone other than who was on the board. So needless to say, there was a lot of changes that needed to go into the application. Although it is long, 75 minutes, I encourage the directors to watch the video that I recorded after the first court hearing. After the amigo requested and court-approved survey was sent to the owners, the results were so overwhelming in favor of exit that the decision to sell the entire property was obvious and restructuring was not a viable option. Think about it. If we had followed Darren's wishes, all of the exit seekers would have to have paid huge sums of money and to fund the restructuring. David reviled the huge number of exit seekers that were pushing back against his authoritarian rule. I will forever be thankful to the three amigos, Team Awesome, Lawyer Lou, and all our Facebook supporters that banded together to ensure that democracy prevailed. When they did that survey, I believe it was 70 or 80% of the owners voted that they wanted to exit. And I believe she also added, when the three amigos saw the court paperwork, and which was only released a few days before the court date, they got their own lawyer to fight. It was through our efforts that the voice of the people were heard. If we had let Marty and Darren run the show, thousands of owners would have had to pay roughly $3,000 for each deed to get out of their timeshare. And I believe instead they each received $3,000 or whatever their unit was worth. So Miriam, maybe it's another approach to force the sale of the Manhattan Club. If they took a survey of all the people that wanted out of the Manhattan Club, and ARDA is continually touting that 85% people love their timeshares, and many do. I'm on some Facebook groups where there's 45,000 members, but a lot of the time it's people that have an adverse life event that reach out to us. So these people that are happy campers, happy timeshare campers, if you have a loan, they say there's medical hardship, but it's an uphill battle. We'll see how it proceeds with Sonia, but it's just. And then the ARDA article, the millennial timeshare boom. Timeshares are back, but better. And ARDA is mentioned over and over in this. And the reporter said, the good thing about timeshares, quite simply, timeshares hold their financial value.
It's of course
Unlike,
misleading. Yeah, it's also misleading.
unlike Airbnb and hotels. So we've asked, there's been several people that have written to the editor of that paper. She's a paid writer. So we're hoping that both of you will consider writing a letter to, I think, Julie, you did write a letter to that editor.
I did write a letter. I did not get a response, but I did write the letter.
Do you remember what you said?
I said that he was very misleading, and I shared my experience of not being able to get rid of my timeshare for $1 over a 3-year period with the resale or the exit program I hired. And that, I think I even said on a couple of the sites, they're listed for $1 or $1,000 and they're not selling. So I asked him to get a hold of you and to write kind of share the other side of the story, but I don't think he will.
Well, and I wish I could get to it. We've had a lot of people reaching out to TARDA, and I just feel for every soul that we touch, we hopefully will have prevented them from the number of scams that are calling, offering to help you with your timeshare, including the Jalisco, Mexico cartel that has been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury for distributing fentanyl and timeshare exit scams in America, and probably Canada too, because Canada issued a warning against Canadians buying timeshares in Mexico.
Good. Because I know some people who have had bad experiences. But it's true that, for example, the Manhattan Club, we have enjoyed very much being there. It was like a bit of a home away from home. We get familiar with the neighborhood. It's a fantastic location. And if they hadn't had all these obstacles of not getting the dates you want, but mostly increasing those annual fees all the time, and then finding out you cannot get out of there, you cannot actually sell it as we thought we could, that spoils everything. So instead of making people happy owning timeshare and being able to dispose of them, they make everybody furious with this very actually criminal nearly regulation that you are stuck with it and your heirs are stuck with that same liability forever. It doesn't make any sense. It's pure capitalism business at its worst. I would say it's horrible to say, but it's true. It's just some people are capitalizing on this kind of situation, and it's actually simply not nice.
Well, and what I like about this show is it really is a reality TV show. So we had Julie on before we had her talk to our board member that has experience in transfers and deeds and what have you, and got a proactive, positive approach. So we'll be on the edge of our seats next November. To see, you might be a guest to have a happy ending, or you might be, I'll introduce you to Karen as a support. There's nothing like a common bond to bring people together. And the people on these other groups that say, these people that are complaining, I don't know what their problem is. They just need to use it. One of our board members, and also Tom, who 23 years with the Baltimore Police Department, both of them were upsold to rent more. If you buy more points, you can rent them out. And one of them has received a cease and desist letter accused of commercial activity. And so what's the end result is they've been owners for 20 years. They were happy for 20 years until they were lied to about the ability to rent to offset the program. And now they have more points than they need. And one of the families is discussing default. It's just not fair. And Kim, I just want to thank your sister, Kelly, who has been, we've reached out to her for a couple people, including Katie Holloway that was on our show before. And she's a credit repair expert. She works for Motivation Mortgage. She can do lending in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And if you have a timeshare loan that you're in default of, she's going to take that bull by the horn and try to convince that a lender should disregard that because it's in a class of its own when it comes to debt.
Well, one of the things I've learned too from another person who does debt repairs, he said to try to invalidate the timeshare as a mortgage or as a property, but try to invalidate it. So I think that we can all keep doing what we're doing, but all we're doing is spinning wheels and getting little problems fixed. But the problem is continuing to mushroom and grow and get bigger and festate into places, causing bigger problems. And, to me, it's predatory lending, especially with some of the elderly, as we have seen. It's just wrong. And people, thank God for people like these two beautiful women and yourself and the team that we're standing up against them. But it's going to take more than, a handful of people with the lobbyists that have their hands in the pockets of the timeshares and the politicians. So we need to work together.
Sounds good.
Oh, and FYI, if you go on vacation real soon, don't buy a timeshare, please.
Well, you can buy a timeshare, but we have a whole list of people that you can buy on resale.
There you go.
Yes, yeah, buy from Julie.
If you want to buy before you go. And also, just if you want to go into the timeshare pitch and take a camera with you.
Yes, and we've had two people
and bring it back
recently.
to us. I hate advertising like that, but you know what? The tactics that they are using, they need to be stopped. And I think that we're at a point that we need to fight back, and we need to use any means necessary. So, but the thing is know that you have rights and you have people who stand up for your rights. We're not politicians. We are here for the people's voice and to help you.
And if you get the hang of this, Julie, I can get you a job selling timeshares on the resale market and renting.
And Irene pointed out something. That's something people should do before they buy is go online and look to see how much they can pick up a timeshare for on the resale market.
And if you do that, make sure you look at the restrictions. Marriott and Disney have very few restrictions, whereas Diamond Resorts points, you can't rent to anyone you don't know, and there's excessive restrictions on resale. So thank you both. This was a great show. I enjoyed being here.
Thank you.
Know before you buy, and thank you for your support. And we'll see you next Monday on Timeshares, Solution or Surrender. Everyone have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that definitely. I have a problem with my